Okay, so my name's Ali, and like Claire said, I was working with the Centre for Youth of Hope, or COHO, in Gabs, or Gaborone, Botswana. So just a little bit of context first. So Gabs is right on the border with South Africa, and Botswana itself is a small landlocked country just on top of South Africa. It's got a population of approximately 2 million people, so quite small, although they do have a quite rapidly growing economy because of the discovery of diamonds about 20 or 30 years ago now, I think. And it now makes up like 70% of their GDP, so they are now middle income country status and doing quite well. So as you can see, Gabs is quite south in its area, and what I didn't realize in doing all of the research before I went there was that that would mean it would be winter when I got down there. So all the pictures that you'll see in the background don't have me in it because I was huddled in a blanket while I was taking them. So COHO is a small NGO that works in the HIV/AIDS sector in Gabs. It's only got a staff of 3 permanent people. So like I said, quite small, but their impact has been quite large, and they're well recognized within that sector. So their mission is to promote better quality of life for youth infected and affected by HIV through the provision of prevention and support services. So like I said, they're responsible for numerous initiatives, although the one that they're most recognized for, at least at this time, is the Staying Alive project. So what they have done is they have peer educators, so people who are also HIV positive, and they work in all of the clinics in Gabs, and they hold sessions with people who have just found out that they're HIV positive, and they are kind of like small support groups, and just go over how to live with this new diagnosis and different services that are available to them. So in Botswana, the HIV/AIDS prevalence rate is the 3rd highest in the world. So between the ages of 15 to 49, it's at 23%. Although there's been a really strong commitment and will by the government and civil society to having no new infections. And as part of that, one of the things that they have done that has been extremely successful is free and universal access to antiretrovirals. And because of that and a lot of other initiatives that they're working on, Botswana is now seen as a really good model for an effective response to the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And because of that, lots of other countries are looking to the idea, particularly of free and universal access to ARVs, but also to the other work that Botswana has been doing in this area. So my role with COHO was as a resource mobilization intern. So some of the things that they were hoping for me to do was, first of all, to get a better understanding of the HIV/AIDS context in Botswana, to develop funding proposals as was required, plan and attend events, and most of all, to develop strategies for sustainable resource mobilization, which I'll talk about a little bit later, I think. So quite a few challenges to this. First of all being that, as I said, Botswana is now a middle-income country, due in large part to the diamonds that are being found. And because of that, a lot of other countries, like Canada, are unfortunately pulling out a lot of the funding that was dedicated to HIV/AIDS relief for Botswana. So that, in combination with the fact that they are now seen as a success story for dealing with the HIV/AIDS epidemic, has really limited the number of funders that are out there and that are willing to give in this area. Another challenge that I had was limited direction. So this is, like I said, a really small NGO, so there's only 3 permanent staff. One of the staff was specifically hired for the Staying Alive project, and so she really didn't have much to do with my work on a day-to-day basis. And the director and her husband, who are the other 2 permanent staff, when I first got to Gabs, they had just found out that he had a quite serious health condition, and so I didn't really have much interaction with them for about the first month. And so that made it quite difficult to kind of get going on things. And so yeah, this small staff and, as a result, somewhat limited direction kind of limited what I was able to accomplish during my time there. So some of my achievements were, first of all, a greater understanding of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Botswana. I was able to attend a couple of workshops that were hosted by national agencies, and those were really interesting and also a really good opportunity to see what consultants in this area had discovered and what their suggestions were. I went to one on a Thursday and one on a Friday, and the Thursday one was such an inspirational moment, and it was really exciting to see what kind of ideas were like being put out there. And then the one the next day was really not good in the end, and so it was interesting to see the comparison between the two and to learn from both of those as to what to do and what not to do. And then I also learned a lot about the cultural complexities that are inherent to the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So a lot of the concerns that we would face in Canada if you were to deal with like trying to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS, really not what I was finding down there. So some examples were that arguably, depending on who you ask, male circumcision has increased. And some people see that as being a permanent condom, and so it has in some ways actually contributed to the spread, because there's a belief that now you don't have to use protection because you have a permanent protection. So just kind of things like that that I really hadn't expected to see, which were really eye-opening. And then exposure to really good initiatives. So like I said, I was able to attend a couple of workshops and conferences that were hosted by national agencies, and just to hear presentations by a lot of really good small NGOs in the sector, and just to see what a really good small NGO can accomplish in such a dire situation was really interesting as well. So my overall experience, like I said, there were difficulties with resource mobilization specifically, again because of the small staff, the middle income country status that Botswana has recently gained, and the fact that they're seen as a success story, although numerous challenges are still present, made it quite difficult to actually mobilize any resources. I had a lot of really great travel opportunities. I was able to travel to northern Botswana and see a lot up there and down into southern Africa, and South Africa in particular, and so that was really interesting as well. A really good cultural experience. I learned a lot from that, and just a great opportunity for personal growth. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali. I won't ask you how well the health course prepared you for your for your field placement, but I will ask you to talk a little more about this idea of preventing new cases of HIV/AIDS. And you mentioned the strategy of using more drugs for people who are infected, which theoretically makes sense because people would be rendered non-infectious, but we know that that's not going to be completely effective. So could you talk a bit about some of the factors you think, or social determinants and other factors that would need to be dealt with in order to prevent or reduce the number of new infections?
Yes, I actually thought you would ask me that, and so I made notes in my phone about it. So yeah, first of all, like you said, the universal and free access to drugs has been obviously really positive because it's increasing the lifespan of a lot of people who are affected. Again, there's this view that now that I'm on drugs, I don't have to worry about transmitting to anyone else. People were also saying that they've heard that because there is free and universal access, there are some people that don't care if they do become HIV positive, because then, well, now they already have drugs, so it's not really an issue anymore. Again, male circumcision. So there's, that belief in quite a few communities that now I'm circumcised and now that's like a permanent thing and I don't have to worry anymore about anything else. There's a reluctance on the part of civil society and government to address sex workers and also men who have sex with men. And they're starting to recognize now that that is a really serious issue, but again, it's one of those things that being recognized as an issue, but again, we don't really want to touch it just yet. So yeah, I think that those were the major problems. And then I guess just in terms of attitudes, other countries recognizing Botswana as a success story has kind of made a lot of people sit back a little bit and think that there's not as much to do anymore. And there still obviously is a lot, and it kind of seems like when you get rid of one challenge by, say, giving universal access to ARVs, then another 5 pop up. So I guess just an overall attitude that the problem has been dealt with is a bit of an issue. Yeah, I'd say those are the big ones.